My name is Bryce, and I'm a senior here at the Athletic Training Program at Marshall University. And today I would like to discuss a case study on a Division II football player. So a bit of background information on this injury. So it occurred on August 29th, 2019. It was a 19-year-old male athlete. He was a Division II NCAA football player, and he was a defensive outside linebacker. This athlete sustained 3 injuries in one occurrence: a dislocation of the left elbow, a grade 3 flexor pronator mass strain, and a complete avulsion of the ulnar collateral ligament from the distal insertion. Now, UCL tears used to be a career-ending injury, but over time, due to technological advances, we can now return 100% and get back on the field in no time. A little bit more background information. So the injury occurred during football practice. The athlete was going to tackle a running back and strip the football, but upon attempting to strip the football, the running back grasped down on the defensive outside backer's hand, making his arm stuck in an extended motion. And whenever this happened, a second defensive player came in and hit the outside of his elbow, opening up that medial joint space, resulting in the injuries. Now we're going to go over a little bit of elbow anatomy for y'all. So the elbow is a uniaxial hinge joint, which means that it allows for flexion, extension, pronation, and supination. And there's 2 ligaments within the elbow that help with any outside forces that can damage. You got the ulnar collateral ligament, which is the medial ligament, and then you have your radial collateral ligament, which is the lateral ligament. And anytime there's an outside force opening up that medial joint space, you could possibly have injury to that UCL. And anytime there's medial impact, which opens up that lateral space, there can be damage to the radial collateral ligament. Then you also have your flexor muscles, and then you also have your extensor muscles. Extensors are going to help with extension of the wrist, and flexors are going to help with flexion of the wrist. Anytime there's damage to these muscles, those types of movements can be impaired. Now, as far as the athletic trainer's evaluation, the athletic trainer noted that there is moderate effusion in the medial joint space of the elbow, which could possibly show signs of injury to that area, good capillary refill, point tenderness over the medial joint space, and a palpable gap in the medial joint space, which could be a possible sign of an avulsion. The athletic trainer also recorded the initial ranges of motion. For extension, it was 40 degrees when the normal is 0, and for flexion, it was 110 degrees when the normal is 135 plus. Now, extension is going to be extending the elbow, and flexion is going to be flexing the elbow. Athletic trainer also noted that there is a positive valgus stress test, which indicated injury of the UCL. The physician's initial evaluation was the same day of the injury, and he also got a positive valgus stress test. The physician then ordered an orthoscan, mobile imaging, and an MRI. The orthoscan was used to show any injuries to the bone, and the MRI was used to show any injuries to the soft tissue. The MRI revealed a complete ulnar collateral ligament avulsion and a grade 3 flexor pronator mass strain. The MRI also revealed signs of a dislocation, but it's since then been relocated. Physician put in an order for a complete ulnar collateral ligament reattachment and a flexor pronator mass reattachment. The surgery was scheduled as soon as possible due to the potential retraction of the flexor pronator mass. And anytime a muscle breaks or tears or snaps, there's possibility of a retraction, and whenever a muscle does retract, it's a lot harder to get it back to its original length. The surgeon made an incision in the medial joint space of the elbow and then was able to use the original ulnar collateral ligament and just re-anchor it back into place. The doctor also then pulled the flexor pronator mass back into place and anchored the muscle to the tendon. Now the athlete was to start the long process of rehabilitation. During the immediate post-operative phase, which is the 1 to 3 week time span, the main focus was controlling pain and inflammation. To do this, the athletic trainer would use cryotherapy, and some examples of cryotherapy are cold water immersion or using cold ice packs. The athletic trainer would also use sensory level pre-mod to help decrease that inflammation and pain. And what this is just electrical stimulations that just kind of help stimulate the area and just calm everything down and make it a more suitable environment for healing. The athletic trainer also used PRICE, which is known as pressure, rest, ice, compression, and elevation. All of these are used to decrease pain and inflammation. The athletic trainer would also use massage techniques to help reduce scar tissue buildup, and would also do some slight flexion and extension exercises only with the brace on, and was very careful not to damage the graft. During weeks 3 to 6, cryotherapy and sensory level pre-mod were still used to help decrease inflammation and pain. Compression was also still used along with the rest of Bryce. Some cupping methods were implemented to help reduce scar tissue buildup, and intense range of motion work done passively. And now what this means is the athletic trainer is going to help guide the athlete through those motions. And another thing that the athletic trainer would do during this time is braking. And what this is known as is, say the athlete can only bend their elbow to this point. The athletic trainer is going to use all their force to try to force that athlete past that point and thus break him into a greater amount of range of motion. During weeks 7 to 9, we could then focus on combating atrophy. To do this, the athlete would use motor level rush-in, which helps with muscle re-education and muscle strengthening. This causes your entire muscle to completely contract and then relax. The athletic trainer would also use cryotherapy post-rehabilitation to help decrease that inflammation and pain. The athletic trainer would also use cupping methods to help reduce scar tissue buildup. And the athletic trainer would then get the athlete to perform full range of motion exercises, for instance, curls, extensions, kickbacks, anything that's a range of motion in the elbow. The athlete at this point could then do grip strength exercises. So he could squeeze foam balls, do forearm curls, forearm extensions, basically anything to help combat that atrophy that the athlete had sustained. During phase 4, which is known as the last phase of rehabilitation, the athlete would focus on proprioceptive and plyometric-based exercises. Proprioceptive exercises deal with balance, and an example of that would be balancing on a foam pad, either single leg or double leg, while throwing a ball at a bounce back trampoline. Another example of this would be the athlete doing a push-up on a bossy balance ball. For plyometrics, this is one of the last stages of rehabilitation, and it is used to be very game-like and used in the last stage for return to play. An example of this would be performing burpees, a wall chest pass, overhand forward throw, and depth push-ups. As for right now, the athlete has had all range of motion restored, is performing workouts to help gain muscle strength and tone, graft is 100% intact, and plans to continue rebuilding muscle until he is happy with the size. Plans to continue with spring season of football and has since then been cleared for full return to play. Some references for y'all. Thank you, and do you have any questions?